Welcome to The Shift Show with Adriana Bucci. Join me every week to learn all about narcissistic abuse recovery, healing from physical and emotional pain after the abuse, and everything else to do with toxic people and how they affect your physical, emotional, and mental health. And no, you are not the crazy one. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Let's get right to it. Welcome to episode number 16 of The Shift Show. This episode's a great episode. It's an interview that I had with Page Kannor. She is a mind-body mentor and helps people in chronic pain find the tools and resources that they need to end the chronic pain cycle. She has her own TMS journey that we talk all about in this episode, and she started doing this work, being a mind-body mentor, in 2019 after her own situation with TMS. She had full body symptoms. It led her to quitting a career in the fitness industry and outdoor field work. But luckily, she is now pain-free after doing the inner emotional processing to heal yourself from chronic pain, and she enjoys an active lifestyle in Moab, Utah. Her favorite thing about being out of pain is showing up to things that she has always been afraid of learning, and they're usually not so bad after all. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Paige. Thanks so much for being on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Adriana. This is my first podcast experience, so it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. I'm so excited that I get to be your first podcast. That's so cool.
Yes, honor.
Yay. Awesome. So why don't you start off by just telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Page Kannor, and I'm a mind-body mentor. So I work with folks who are in chronic pain to get free from chronic pain. And my own story with all this, I experienced chronic pain myself for several years, from about 2014 through 2018. And I had a lot of problems. I had back and hip and knee and foot and pelvic pain, all at different times and to differing extremes as those symptoms go. The back pain was the worst because it was the most consistent and the most debilitating. So I worked for a long time as an outdoor, doing outdoor field work and as a fitness instructor and personal trainer. And I lost my job and career and my identity as an athlete, which was my sense of self, when my pain got really bad. So for about 4 years consistently, I remember about once a month, I'd wake up one morning, just a random morning, and maybe I'd feel a back spasm and maybe I wouldn't, but within an hour of being awake, or more like 20 minutes usually, my whole body would be in agony. I'd be pitched forward at the waist and I'd just start to swell up, like my back would start to swell up physically. And I couldn't stand up straight, so I'd have to lie on the floor and usually stayed there for like a week until I could walk again.
Wow.
So this happened regularly, again, like once a month for almost 4 years.
Wow. That is wild. Yeah, for sure. And I'm assuming you would have gone to the doctor and stuff like that. Like, what did they say to you?
I went to about, I think, like 5 physical therapists and acupuncture and like chiropractic, bunch of different doctors, massage therapy. I did like Reiki. I tried everything I could think of to try. And at the time I didn't have health insurance. So the option for an MRI was always like the next thing I should do. And I never did it. And now I'm really glad. But at the time I was like, I need to get an MRI. Like, this is the only way I can know what's wrong with me. But I didn't. I was told I had compressed discs and degenerative disc disease and all that, from just based on feel and exam and stuff. And I was too tall to not have problems. So yeah.
Oh wow, that's brutal. That's terrible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh man. So did you just happen to stumble upon the mind-body connection, or like how did you learn about it and then implement that into your life to get out of pain eventually?
Yeah. So I remember I actually remember the exact night that I discovered mind-body technique. So I was standing in my house and I had to drive. it had gotten to my pain had gotten to the point where I couldn't even sit for like more than 5 minutes without being in excruciating pain.
Wow.
And I remember I had to drive the next day for work for like 2 hours, and it was the longest I'd driven in months.
Wow.
And I was really nervous about it. And I was just scrolling through Instagram, like probably trying to distract myself. And I found this ad for Curable app,
Nice.
which I know you're familiar with. And the ad was a link to an article about a woman who had gotten migraines for years and cured them with this app. And I remember thinking like, well, I mean, I've tried everything else. Like at that point, I was so desperate. I just thought, yeah, I'm going to check this out. Like I don't remember even thinking like, well, that's ridiculous. You know, I'm sure I did, but I just was like, okay, I'll do it. I don't even care anything to help.
Yeah. When you're at that point.
Yeah, it was just, you get to a point of desperation, and I think that's what pushes most people over the edge to try this stuff. So the next day on my drive, I listened to the podcast. I started listening to the podcast. And to this day, Laura Sego's voice just calms me down and puts me in such a good, like, calming state. Because of all of the times I listened to her podcast. And I remember I got through that drive, and I was definitely in pain, but I just remember as soon as I started listening, I was like, this is exactly what is going on for me.
Amazing.
And it went from there. Yeah, it was super exciting. And I think within it, actually, Curable didn't do it for me in particular. What did it for me was, I remember reading John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain, and I wrote a chronological timeline of everything that had happened to me at the start of my pain. Just all of anything I could possibly think of. And I'd always thought about these things, but I had never actually written it down. So I wrote it was just this like big old timeline, and every event that could have possibly, you know, led to having pain was on there. And that's, I found it that way. And from then on, I've not had these big blowouts again.
It's amazing. Isn't that crazy how like it literally does line up with your levels of stress?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like, we don't think about it, but once you actually sit down and like do that timeline exercise, it's crazy. I remember doing a timeline exercise too. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it, how everything kind of just coincided with when I'd have a flare up.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so funny because we think of, I mean, you know, we've been taught in Western society that physical problems cause physical symptoms, and that we have to go get treated by a doctor or a pill or a physical therapist. You know, it's always, there's somebody always outside of you that fixes it. And we've also been taught that emotional problems cause emotional issues or mental health issues. And again, but that's the realm of psychiatrists and therapists and, again, pills. But there's, again, with that, it's something else outside of you that needs to fix you. And physical problems and emotional or mental problems have always been separated with a big line, a big fat line down the sand that nobody wants to cross. But the truth is, everything we experience is through a biopsychosocial lens. You know, meaning all our experiences, like including chronic pain and anxiety and emotions and our reactions, are all a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors.
100%.
So these things don't operate in silos. And it blew my mind when I learned that. I just remember thinking like, of course, this makes so much sense. I wasn't really resistant to it after that. Because it just, you know, and it just goes to show like the mind body approach is not a hippy dippy out there idea.
No.
You know, it's an idea that takes into account a more biopsychosocial, a more holistic view of the human experience. So I just really, I really, that was something that I couldn't believe when I learned, like, it makes so much sense.
It really does. And like we tend to just separate the mind from the body. Because
Yeah,
we're taught that from like, the
exactly.
beginning of time, that the mind and the body are two completely different things, but they're actually exactly the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have an effect on one another
they
too.
do. It's crazy.
Such an intricate system.
Yeah, it really is. And I wish more people knew about this.
I
And,
know. Doing this work and
exactly, we're both doing this work, we're sharing our stories, and the more stories we can get out there, the more people will be like aware of this fact that like this is it's not even like some woo woo magic stuff, it's like actual brain science.
yes, neuroscience. It's neuro.
Exactly, it totally is. So how long did it take you to get out of pain once you like found out about the mind body connection and decided that you were open to it until you were like fully out of pain?
So I found out about Curable in September, and or maybe it was October. I think it was September, like mid-September. And then I remember writing that timeline on December 31st of 2018. So it was like, what, 4 months?
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
4 months.
Yeah,
So same timeline as you,
yeah,
interestingly.
yeah, I was 4 months too. Cool. That's
Yeah.
so crazy. Yeah, it's like it's, like I don't like putting timelines on things, but like, if you do put the effort in and you do the work, it
Mm,
doesn't take very long. Like, 4 months of healing work to undo 4 years of pain. That's pretty quick in my opinion.
absolutely. And I will say it's not, again, it's not just you learn this stuff and you're good to go forever. It's a
Right.
continual process. It's
Exactly.
you're continuing to unlearn all of these things that you've been learning all your life.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, and I still do the work, every day.
Yeah. Yeah, me
But
too. Yeah.
it becomes easier and easier as you go.
Exactly. It becomes part of your lifestyle. You just start to like integrate it as like you take a shower every day, you do the emotional work every day, and then
That's so
that's
true. That's
right?
so true.
You clean yourself physically, you clean yourself emotionally, and we're all good to go.
I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So at what point were you inspired by your own healing journey to start like coaching on your own?
It started, I started considering that uh, in like last October or so,
Hmm.
so not too long ago. But it didn't really become a tangible thing that I really wanted
Right.
until, about 2 months ago. I was like, I'm doing it. I'm
Hmm.
absolutely doing it. And it coincided with the onset of COVID-19 and,
Yeah.
the implications of that. And I think I just realized that this was really important to me and I needed to start. And, now is as good a time
That's
as
amazing.
anything else.
Yeah, totally. And I think that makes so much sense. Like in times of crisis, like people need this work. Like,
Mhm.
so it's amazing that you stepped up at this time, like when the world's in whatever you want to call it, complete disarray, pretty much. Yeah. And it's just, like this more than ever now, especially like so many people are having more symptoms or, they're starting to lose their distractions. Like, the long commutes to work are eliminated pretty much.
Yes.
Some people are like, we're just at a point where the majority of us are confronted with ourselves more than ever.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. It's a really hard thing to come to grips with, and I think it's definitely been hard.
Hmm.
Even for me, I haven't noticed physical. There hasn't been any pain. I haven't been in pain during COVID. The anxiety hasn't manifested as pain,
Hmm.
but I've definitely noticed more anxiety.
Yeah.
And oh, there it is. There's the anxiety. There's
Yeah.
and it makes sense. Of course there's anxiety. Of course we're all experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you continually push it away and try to resist it or ignore it, that it just makes it harder on you.
Exactly. And I like to, like, I've had anxiety as well myself, so I totally get it. I've had some anxiety during this pandemic too. And it really is another manifestation of repressed emotions, just like pain.
Yeah.
And I think anxiety is just the repression of fear, where, you know, the fear's trying to surface, but we keep pushing it down, pushing it down. And it's like you feel a panic attack coming on, and all you can think about is how much you don't want it to happen and how horrible it's going to be. And that just makes things so much worse, rather than just kind of allowing the fear to be there and allowing yourself to actually look at the fear and realize that it's not going to do anything to you. It's just
Right.
a feeling. It's an emotion.
Yes. It's amazing how sneaky this stuff is, right?
Yes.
Because the pain, after a while, you outsmart maybe the pain,
Mm-hmm.
the manifestation of pain itself,
Mm-hmm.
but then it pops up in other ways.
Yes.
Like other symptoms sometimes, or anxiety, or just like anything else.
Yeah. The symptom imperative in action right there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, the symptom imperative, Dr. John Sarno describes it as when, you know, you have TMS, tension myositis syndrome, mind body syndrome, whatever you want to call it, and your symptoms are in one part of your body, and then you start doing the work and the symptoms kind of start jumping around to different parts of your body, or they manifest in different ways. So it could be, you know, you had chronic pain and now you have anxiety, or you had anxiety and now it's turned into like weird skin rashes and
Mhm.
randomly. Like, I remember one time when I was doing my healing work, I woke up with hives one day, and
Oh
it
man. Wow.
was it was so random, but it was totally just my repressed emotions. It was the weirdest thing. And, you know, that's such a classic symptom imperative. And I think anxiety is probably the most common one, because we spend all this time repressing our emotions for our whole lives, that, you know, it's pain, and then all of a sudden the emotions start to surface, and then it's anxiety, and it's like we just don't know what to do with ourselves.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think chronic anxiety and chronic pain are really on two
Yeah,
sides of the coin.
so true. So what was your experience like with feeling emotions and just kind of having anxiety towards that?
So I've always experienced a lot of anxiety. I grew up experiencing chronic anxiety through my life. And one of the things I did most when I was in pain was catastrophize and obsess over the pain,
Mm-hmm.
which of course made it worse. And I see that a lot in
Yeah.
people I work with, and that's so normal. But I think the biggest lesson for me wasn't necessarily in learning how to tap into my emotions, or how to draw more emotion forth, but just allowing for the emotion that I did have.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talk a lot in with TMS or mind body syndrome that fear is really the biggest issue,
Yes.
right? I'm super sensitive, and I've always been so terrified and confused by my abundance of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that all our emotions are so much scarier than they actually are.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing the full brunt of your emotions is hard, especially when you haven't allowed for that before.
Yeah.
But we demonize things that are hard or things that hurt, and we avoid them at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's understandable. It's human. But once you allow it to be hard, once you just say like, oh, here's a hard thing that I'm experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
instead of trying to resist it and push it down, it's so much easier to get curious and compassionate, and allows for space between you and that
Yes.
thing.
Yes. I
Which,
love what you say about getting curious.
yeah, getting curious has been probably the most useful thing I can think of
Yeah.
in this work, because it allows for that compassion. It allows for you to put space between it just doesn't, it makes it feel less personal and
Right.
less scary and overwhelming, all of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. And what would you recommend to somebody when they're having a difficult emotion? Like, what would you recommend that they do on like, how can they begin to get curious and, allow themselves to feel that?
So I think the first thing to do when a tough emotion arises is to notice it and acknowledge that it's there. Because because so many of us are in the habit of just saying, nope, get out of here. I don't want to deal with it. So noticing it and acknowledging it is huge. And then the second thing, if you can name it, that's also great. And be as descriptive as you can with this, because that will help take its power away. It normalizes it when you say, oh, this is what it's like to feel fear or grief or whatever. I'm just experiencing this thing. It's okay.
Yes.
So if you can it and describe it, that's awesome. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, get curious about how it feels in your body. And that can scare us too, because we're so used to that. We're so used to being afraid of these symptoms. But if you can ask yourself what physical sensations are coming up for you. And if you, again, being descriptive as possible helps normalize it. It helps take away its power. So just by not judging your sensations or feelings and just watching them, that can really help yourself feel like a curious observer. You're detached from this a little bit. There's a little space there.
Yeah, totally. 100%. And what would you say, like, the best way of doing, like with getting curious and all that? Do you think it's enough to just think about it, or should people write these things down and journal? Like, what would your best method of allowing yourself to be curious be in like a concrete way?
I think it can vary. I mean, it can be sort of a meditative thing. I really love letting myself, I imagine myself as like a tiny me, like jumping into my body and like being like the Magic School Bus style.
Oh, nice.
That's what I picture when I do this.
I love it.
So it's kind of like a visualization exercise for me, because I can really get in there and picture myself like sitting down on a chair and looking at these symptoms, looking at whatever sensations are coming up and naming them and describing them, like, oh, there's a tightness in my chest, or like, this feels like the color, like red or something, if it's tight, whatever. And writing it down also really helps. I think it can really help get things flowing through you. I mean, journaling is great. I know you're a fan, and I'm a fan too. So letting that flow through you through journaling is also awesome.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. I love that visualization exercise though. That's so cool. Like, you just imagine yourself. I remember there was a curable exercise that was super similar to that from the app. It was like it was like a pain control. It was like that control center.
Yeah, the control room.
Yes, yeah. And it's like you pretend you're like a little version of you, and you're in your brain and you're like doing stuff with the pain or whatever. So that reminds me of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's super similar to that actually.
Yeah.
But in this case, instead of doing anything with the pain, you're just watching it, and you're following it around. Wherever it goes, you go, and you're just being, you're not judging it. You're just looking at it.
I love that.
So
that's so cool. I really like that.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, totally. And I hear you when you say like without judging it, because we're so like quick to judge our pain, and it could become like, oh, well, if I didn't sit down for 30 minutes, I wouldn't be in pain, or if I didn't do this thing wrong, I wouldn't be in pain, or if I didn't stand for too long, I wouldn't be in pain. And then it just comes to a point where it's like you just have to accept, like, I'm feeling pain right now, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I can just witness it and be present as I witness that pain. And then it kind of goes away.
And especially, I think if you can tell yourself you're safe and really believe that, I think at first, when people are first getting into TMS and mind body work, it can be really hard to really believe that your pain isn't structural.
Right.
But telling yourself you're safe is such a powerful tool to help you. And breathing, right? Like, all of that can really help you regain control of your nervous system.
100%. Definitely. And I hear you on being caught up in thinking something's wrong with your body and the structural abnormalities and whatnot. I know I was super caught up with that because, you know, I had the MRI of my jaw and it was like compressing my ear. So I was like, no, like my body's actually broken. But what worked for me was I actually put on my phone wallpaper for the longest time. It was like one of Dr. Sarno's quotes, just reminding me that there is nothing wrong with my body.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And that can be one of the most difficult challenges to overcome or to hurdle. And honestly, quite honestly, I still experience moments like just like fleeting thoughts where I'm sure that, you know, it's structural again. I'm like, oh, this time it's structural.
Yeah.
And that's like a split second thought that I'll have. And it's so, because it's so conditioned in us. We're so tired, you know, we're so taught to believe that physical issues cause physical symptoms.
Exactly.
It's just not the case.
Yeah. It's so wild. It's so like almost unreal to even today for me that this is the truth, of the capital T truth, that our physical issues are not the cause for pain. It's just, it's so like, for me, it was really hard to wrap my head around, and still is, even though like I'm totally pain free. And, you know, it's just, that's how indoctrinated we are in our society to believe that, you know, physical abnormalities matter when it comes to pain levels.
Yeah. It's definitely a something of a paradigm shift, you know, this whole idea.
Yeah.
But it's a it's a really worthwhile one.
Totally. I could not agree more. All right, so we are out of time. So before we end, what would you say your best piece of advice would be, like the biggest thing you've learned about the mind-body connection, that would help other people to, you know, be inspired to do this work?
So I have this quote. I posted it a little while ago, but it says, our resistance to and repulsion of our own feelings is almost always heavier and more cumbersome than the feelings themselves.
Yes.
Which is to say, the fear is so much more difficult than the actual thing that you're afraid of.
Yes. So true.
And if you can find safety, if you can reteach yourself how to find safety in your own body, which you can through this work, then you won't stay trapped in pain for long, because it'll lose its power.
I agree. That's so good. It's like the resistance to the emotion is worse than just feeling the emotion.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And they don't even last that long once you're like fully in it and invested in feeling it. It could take just a few minutes, and then it actually goes away, and you can actually witness it going away. And it's like, wow, what was I so resistant for? But it's a matter of, you know, allowing yourself to have that resistance and just saying like, this resistance is normal. It's my brain trying to tell me, like trying to keep me safe somehow. And, you know, I can still feel the feeling anyways, even if I'm resisting it.
Yeah. And it's a process. It's you know, it takes a lot of practice. It's a habit and a skill, just like anything else. So.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and your story. How can people find you? I'll put all the information in the description, but let us know like what your Instagram is, or any ways that people can contact you if they're interested in coaching.
Yes. So my Instagram is at Page Kannor, and my name is PageKannor. And I'm currently working on a website, so hopefully I'll have that soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast and sharing all this amazing stuff.
Thanks for having me, Adriana.
Of course, anytime.
All right.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.